Okay, welcome everybody. I think we are currently live on YouTube. We are streaming as well. So if anybody doesn't want their image recorded or their voice, mute yourself or turn off your camera. I need to quickly pause. I don't know how to prevent this from happening. There we go. Today, welcome to our virtual user group for Backdrop CMS. Today's topic is command line tools. There's a lot of interest in this topic. This is pretty close to our best attended virtual user group. I think we've had about this many once before. Usually we're a little bit smaller than this, but so thanks everybody for coming. Because we're a little large group, let's kind of do a quick round of introductions for those who are available. Yeah, I think we're going to do what we do at our regular meetings, which is introduce yourself quickly and then call on somebody else that hasn't been introduced yet. If you don't want to do an introduction, you can just either shake your head, wave us past, or not reply. I know Luke is busy lurking, so we won't call on him other than what we just did. My name is Tim. I'm here in Deerwood, Minnesota. I've been doing Backdrop for several years now, and I'm a member of the project management committee. Alan, why don't you go next?
I'm Alan. I work for Altergrid, Drupal, and now Backdrop specific hosting company. And well, this is one of my first times attending this kind of events, live events. That's all. Tim, I can't hear you.
Wilbur, do you want to go next? Each person should call on the next person.
Yeah, my name is Wilbur Ince. I'm a developer in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I work a lot. I've worked extensively with Drupal 7 and now with Drupal 8 and also with Backdrop. And I'm moving a lot of people to Backdrop actively. I also have a lot of experience using Docker development environments. And my sort of day job at a Drupal agency is I'm a DevOps person. So a lot of automation tests and a lot of Drush and B sort of things. So with that, I will send it over to BW Panda.
Yes, I'm Peter, aka BW Panda. I'm from Australia. I'm a core committer for Backdrop and also the maintainer of the Backdrop console, aka B module, which I'll be talking about today. Martin.
Hi, I'm Martin. I'm in the UK. I've been doing Drupal 7 for a while. I dipped my toe in the water of Drupal 8, but I just couldn't get the hang of it. I was all right with Drush and used to doing that over Putty. I've been looking at Backdrop for a couple of months now. I'd like to learn about the console tools for Backdrop.
Jeff?
Robert.
Oh, Robert.
I'm Robert Lang, aka Bug Folder on GitHub and Zulip. I'm in Altadena, California. And I'll hand it to Jason.
I'm Jason from Las Vegas, Nevada, USA. Back-end developer, been building Drupal modules for 17 or 18 years. Hope to do that with Backdrop. Jeff.
Hello, I'm Jeff, Massachusetts, Lando maintainer, Backdrop contributor, and been out of the community for a while, trying to catch up with you guys, see what's going on with your smiling faces. Who didn't go? Aiden.
Hey, yep, I'm Aiden. Also based in the UK in Southeast, and I've been extensively with CRM, which sits on top of Drupal, or Joomla, or WordPress. And so primarily with the WordPress side of things, double the Backdrop side of things, and looking to find out a bit more about that. who's left.
I think that might be
Joseph.
everybody. No. Oh, Joseph, yeah.
Hi, I'm Joseph. I'm from Las Vegas, Nevada also. And I'm a backend developer. Been working on Drupal websites for a long time, like over 10 years, I think. And yeah, just here to see what everyone has to say.
Well, I think you're the last one. Luke is not available to introduce himself, but I think a lot of us know Luke from his involvement in the community. So the intent of the discussion is, I know I hear from a lot of people that they're confused about the command line tools in Backdrop because we have a couple of them out there. Personally, I've used Drush a little bit, and that's it. And I've only been using Drush to a limited extent. Mostly to do ULI to log into sites is the biggest thing I do with Drush. Some of the other things that I'd like to do with Drush, I don't know if they're working with Backdrop. I downloaded B and installed it for the first time and kind of got it working about a week ago. I'm still looking forward to where that's going to go. But anyways, the purpose of this meeting is really to help people like myself get a better and all of you a better understanding what the tools are and also kind of where they're going, because I think each of the tools that we have available has its own sort of story. And I'm not going to speak ahead, but maybe there's a shared direction once we talk about it. Peter has been preparing for this the longest and is ready, but I think we're going to give him a minute and start with put Alan a bit on the spot, because Alan, you developed the brush tool, and why don't you tell us quickly why you did it and what the future of that is in your mind. You can go ahead. We're still muted. You're muted, Alan. You're muted. No.
Not used to this kind of online events. Still learning how to use Zoom. So we came up with forking pre-composer, pre-everything. When Drupal 7 went into too complicated waters, we decided to find the latest brush, or the latest Drush that was able to work without all those additional layers of complexity that it became later. So we found that I think it was version 4.6, and we basically, when we say we, it's several people in Altagrade team. We just forked Drush and made it working with Backdrop. Basically, it is Drush 4.7 or 6. I'm not exactly sure. And we just replaced, we just used, find and replace command, and of course we changed lots of paths to make it work. And now Drush is able to do everything that Drush can do, everything that Drush can do for Drupal 7. Basically, pull the projects from GitHub and do all the sync work. What was missing? One of the reasons why we decided to go forward forking Drush was the fact that both B and Drush integration for Backdrop were not able to sync the databases at the time. I'm not sure how it is now, I was told that the database syncing is already working. For B, I haven't tried, but that was one of the main features we were missing. So basically, when we copied Drush and replaced all the paths and gave it a try, it was working. Most of the commands were working, but we never touched since then. Rarely we changed some things, because we know that eventually we have to switch to B. And you are right, Tim, that it is a temporary project. We do not have plan of supporting Drush. We are just waiting for B to mature enough. But you are welcome to download Drush and see what are the differences between B and Drush. The main disadvantage of Drush is that it has lots of unnecessary code. We never cleaned the functions we don't need for backdrop, for example. It's pretty loaded. That's why I think the future is B. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. That was helpful. And so, Jeff, I could summarize quickly, or if you can, you say a few words just about the status of
Sure.
And I'm putting Jeff on the spot. He was called into this meeting very late. So.
No problem. Yeah, we made Drush. We had the help of the Drush proper maintainers. We had their ear, so that was very helpful. So that was an initial path that we took. We got some things working, like the bootstrap and cache clearing and things like that. So we just kind of continued down that road with some help. And one of the points was we wanted to get Drush working with the Pantheon dashboard. And at that time, the most direct target was to make a Drush extension so that Drush would understand it, so that Pantheon could understand it. In my tenure, we never quite got there, so I don't know how important that is still or not. But I tend to agree. I initially wrote the B project. I haven't been maintaining it. Peter's been doing that. Thanks, Peter. So I definitely agree that the future is a clean slate B that is intended for integration with Backdrop and getting that to be feature complete with developer expectations.
If people have questions about either of those two projects, we can talk about it later, but I think we should probably focus, as both of Jeff and Alan seem to be, on B. So Peter, why don't you go ahead and tell us about B and where it's at and what you see its future is?
Yeah. So as Jeff said, he was the one that originally wrote B or Backdrop console, and he wrote it from scratch for Backdrop. So if you look at the original commits, it's just literally like, I think the cache clearing or cron running command or something was one of the first ones, and just built out commands from there. When I came onto the scene, I've been using Drush for years with Drupal, and then with Backdrop as well, I was using that. And it got to a point, I'm a very heavy user of multi-site functionality in both Drupal and Backdrop. And I was running a command from a multi-site trying to download a module into my site-specific directory. And Drush was downloading it into the main directory for all my sites to use, and I didn't want that. So I went and posted an issue in the Drush's queue, and Jeff said he's accepting pull requests. I went and tried to do a pull request to sort of fix that and make it work properly with multi-sites. But the code was just too complex for me. I just couldn't get my head around it, couldn't end up getting it working. I think Jeff himself, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think he used multi-site much to be able to help knowing how that works. So I got stuck with it, and I just basically posted in Drush's issue queue saying that, Drush is too complicated. I wish there was just like a sort of like trimmed down version of Drush. And just like, oh, have you seen B? Like this, we wrote that for that exact purpose. I'm like, oh wow! So I went and checked that out, and that was perfect. It was like the code was much simpler. It was written for Backdrop from scratch, sort of thing, and it also didn't have multi-site support. But I was able to do that and make a pull request and get that working much more easily. So with sort of my work in there, and then Jeff made me a sort of maintainer there, and yeah, so that's how I started working with B, and I see it as basically being Drush for Backdrop, but written from scratch without all the overhead of like Composer or the previous code pile, like Alan was saying, all the extra code that's unneeded, all that sort of stuff. So lately, for the past 12 months or so, I've been the primary maintainer of B, and I've been basically refactoring the entire code base, partly to fix an issue with it where I think different commands you could have like the same command be running two different bits of code, and it was a bit confusing, and so there was an issue about how to fix that up. So as part of fixing that up, I then just took the opportunity to go through the whole code base and just clean it up a bit, fix it up, make it more stable, more standardized, that sort of thing. And so on and off the last 12 months, I've been doing that, and I've finished pretty much all of that. There is just one issue left, which is just getting the tests, PHP unit tests working. And then I think I'm going to be ready to launch version 1 of B, which will be the sort of stable version we can then build off for the future. So yeah, my plan has been not to sort of add new functionality yet, sort of thing, but just get the B to be more stable and ready. And then once version 1 launches, which will hopefully be in the next month or so, then we can then start adding new features, new commands, sort of build it up to be sort of more similar to where Brush and Drush is in terms of feature-wise. So yeah, that's sort of my involvement in B, and then that's where it is currently. I don't know if you want to have questions now, if you want me to do any sort of demoing or something.
Does anybody have any questions yet at this stage? No? Okay. Yeah, Peter, if you've got something to demo, why don't you go ahead and do that now?
Okay, so I'll share my screen. So hopefully that's working. You can see my screen.
Yep, I can see it.
Yep, okay. So this is the B repository. So yeah, one of the things I want to point out with B is that it is under active development, and as such there might be breaking changes. So unlike Backdrop Core, where we try to be backwards compatible and not break things, with B, before I came onto the project, and also since I've been on there, it's been the thing that's like we're actively building it, maintaining it, and we're just going to be probably breaking things, fixing them, that sort of thing. So I've kept that disclaimer there, just so people know that yeah, if we find a bug, it's like something's not working the way it should be, we need to change something, we will change it, we will fix it. It might break things, but we'll put out, once we get a stable version release, we'll put out like release notes for each version to say what's been changed and whatever. One other thing, I'm not sure where Brush and Drush are, but I'm not familiar with Microsoft Windows much in terms of especially console things, but apparently B doesn't work with Windows. That was the case from back when it first started, I believe. So I'm not sure if that's one of the differences between people wanting to evaluate one versus another tool, but yeah, if B apparently doesn't work with Windows, and if there's people that want it to work, then I'm open to pull requests on that, because I'm not familiar with that. But yeah, there's instructions here on how to get it working on your system. And I've got my setup here. Now I'm using Lando, so things will be a little bit different from maybe if you've just installed B on your server or your computer directly. But this is actually as part of my writing and fixing the tests for B. I've got a Lando file that ships with B, and that's for like development purposes. And also I'm hoping that we'll be able to use this for running tests against any pull requests in the future. So this Lando file does different things, and one of them is that it sets up 3 backdrop sites. So one backdrop site is just a backdrop instance, like a backdrop folder, and it's just using a normal backdrop as you would probably most people would use it. And then it installs a separate backdrop instance called Multisite, and instead of using the normal way of installing it, it uses the Multisite setup. So it's got 2 sites within the Multisite setup. And this is so that because B supports Multisites out of the box, we want to be able to test to make sure commands work as they should. So the tests are all built around both normal backdrop and then Multisite backdrop. And so because of that, on this setup, it's got those folders there which we can sort of test with. So for people that might not be familiar with command line tools in general, it's basically when you're logged in like SSH into a server or on your computer using the command line, you can run.
Peter, can I interrupt you? You might need to speak up a little bit. I think you're getting just a little hard to hear.
Okay. Yeah, so if you're wanting to run commands against your backdrop site, then that's what these tools are for. And they'll let you do something like this, and you can get information about a backdrop site. So as I said, for me, Lando, I'm using Lando, so because of that, I have to preface everything with Lando. But if you were running B yourself on your own server, then you just write B status. Now in this case, I'm running it outside of a backdrop directory, and I haven't specified which backdrop directory I want to use. So that's why I get this message. But if I was to go into a backdrop site, so this is a normal backdrop site, and then run that, then you get some basic overview of the site, what version of backdrop it's running. In terms of Lando, it's in the app/backdrop directory. The type of this site is just a single site. It's like a normal backdrop site. It's not a multi-site. And then some information about the database, etc. If I was to go to the multi-site directory and run the same command, then it says it's a multi-site sort of installation, but there's no information about the database because we're not sure what site we're using. And so we can either...
Pardon, may I ask a question, actually a suggestion? Can you please try Lando SSH command?
Yeah, well that'll work as well.
Yeah, that would take you inside of the system, and then all the commands that you are showing us would be shorter, but basically it would be the same, right? You know.
I mean, if you wanted to do that, you can do that.
Okay.
I mean, I'm fine using it as is here, but yeah, for people using it themselves, you won't have to do the whole long command.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so if I go into a site, so now I'm into one of my multi-site specific sites. If I run the same command, now I see that it's a multi-site. The site directory is multi1, which is where we are, and gives information about this particular site. So B can, I mean, status is just one of the commands that you can use to give you information about the backdrop installation. But yeah, what I was trying to show here is the ability for B to be able to use multi-sites as well as normal backdrop installations. Now, if you just run B command or B help, they do the same thing. It shows the overview of all the sort of commands that are currently supported. So normally you just write B and then any global options, the command you want to use, and then any command-specific options or arguments after that. The global options are these 4. So root lets you specify which backdrop installation you're wanting to target with whatever command you're running. So you can either run the command from within the backdrop installation, or if you can't do that for whatever reason, you can specify root global option, and that'll tell it which installation you're targeting. And the same with site. So if you are using multi-site, as well as telling it which backup installation to use, you can tell it which site, like specific site you're wanting to target. So if you're wanting to run cron or clear caches or whatever you want to tell it exactly which site you're trying to do that for. And you can do that with that option. Yes, we'll just obviously it's more of an automated thing where it just answers yes to any questions that pop up. For example, if you want to do something that requires.
Sorry, another request. Please, little bit louder. I can barely hear you.
Yeah, so my computer fan seems to have gone louder since I started sharing my screen, so it's probably that. Yeah, so if you're wanting to run, like I think someone before was talking about, they do automation with stuff like using V and other tools to do automation. So with that, you want to use this option to make it so it's not interactive, but you can just say, do this, and then answer yes to any prompts that come up. And there's a debug mode, which I don't really use, but it's there, and we might sort of build that out later on for more information. But this is a list of commands that we currently support. There's not many. Again, B was written from the ground up for Backdrop, and as such, we have to literally put in all the commands that people are used to with Drush manually. And I'll just show you the issue queue. So as I said, one of the things I'm wanting to do is get it to a stable version 1, and then work on adding extra features. So the only bug or thing left to do before version 1 is just fixing the tests. After that, every other issue in here is just an enhancement that is just going to add more functionality or make things better. And so that's why we will be adding more commands and more functionality once we launch version 1. But I'm sort of trying to focus on just getting that done at the moment. So while there's not many commands that people are used to, maybe there's Drush, for example, we do have some basic ones in there, like clearing cache for a site, getting and setting config, since that's what Backdrop uses instead of like Drupal variables, running cron, disabling projects, enabling projects, downloading projects or Backdrop core itself, installing a site, so you can sort of have a Backdrop installation ready to go, and then you can actually install the site, like giving it the database connection information and install the site using V, show any sort of watchdog log messages, get information about the projects on your site, modules, themes, or layouts, status, what I showed you before, some theme, and then like setting the admin or default theme, commands there for that, and doing database updates and uninstalling stuff. So obviously some of the ones we want to get added, which have been quite popular, have been, like Tim said, making it so that you can automatically log into a site or reset the passwords. We've got an issue for that. So yeah, definitely a lot more room for improvement with the sort of functionality we have out of the box. But that's where things are currently. I'll just show you one more example. So if I go to these sites, so this is the normal Backdrop installation on my test setup. Then we've got multi-one. So this one is called Backdrop. This one's called Multisite 1, and then and this is a Multisite 2. So just to show how the multi-site sort of functionality works would be, if we say, so because I'm running this outside of an installation, I'm going to specify root equals, and let's target the multi-site installation. Now if I just do like a download of, say, the devel module, because I haven't specified a site to download into, it'll just download into the root modules directory, which will make it available to all sites. And this is specific to the multi-site installation, not the normal Backdrop installation. So if I run that, so devel is downloaded into the core modules directory in the multi-site installation. And we can see that here. So in the normal Backdrop, there's no devel there because that one wasn't targeted. Multisite was targeted, and that's where I put devel in here. So now, if we log in, So Devel is now available for this multi-site as well as this one. So that's downloaded Devel into the core directory, so all my multi-sites can access it now. If we wanted to target one of them, then, I mean, it doesn't matter where you put the global commands, you can put it at the end or anything, so I'm going to say site equals. And one of the things I did when I was adding the multi-site functionality is I made it so that you can specify site, and then in the sites.php file, you have the URL of the site, and then you've got the directory name within the site's directory of what that site is called. When you specify which site you want to refer to, you can use either the URL or the directory name just to make it easier. You don't have to use just one or the other. So I'm just going to say one, that is the directory name, and that should hopefully, fingers crossed, target that one. So downloading the simplify module into the multi-one website. Nope. Okay. I do need to fix this. I think if it doesn't have the modules directory created by default, then that won't work apparently. So I'm just going to do that myself. That's definitely something that can be fixed, and I think that's something that I've come across before. That's like, oh, that's annoying. So definitely want to fix that. Right. So now.
Okay.
Multi-one modules go simplify, but not multi-two. That wasn't affected. So this is how you can use B to install projects and run commands on specific websites, even within a multi-site installation. Is there a question there?
Well, you could almost not hear you again, so that's why I was interrupting.
Sorry. Yeah, I think that's all that I wanted to show. Basically, yeah, so I guess just leave it up to any questions now or other discussion that we want to have.
Sure. So does anybody have any questions? I have a few.
Peter,
Anybody else want to start?
Peter, when you hit the multi-site URLs, is Backdrop handling that routing, or is that proxy aliases in your Lando file?
So I've got my Lando file set up to have proxy. My multi-site service has multi-one and multi-two.lando.site URLs set up in that. Is that what you meant?
Is SQL query in the cards?
So like,
that was a really nice Drush command.
I haven't come across that myself, but obviously if there's a need for that, we can open an issue and look at getting that added in. I mean, from my point of view, I've used certain commands from Drush a lot and others not at all. So there's obviously a range of stuff out there that people might want that I've never come across. So certainly, if you're looking at something like that, then yeah, open an issue and we can look at getting that added in.
I just want to add to Robert's questions that one of the main reasons why we started to use using Drush without disturbing the other two projects, because we knew that it would take some time to implement these database commands. But I would like to say that as soon B project starts supporting database commands, we are more than happy to switch to B and start even contributing. Unfortunately, too many other things that we do not have time to work on B2, because Drush has all the database features. So please put that on your plans sooner if you can, because I see that for you multi-site features were more important. But for AltaGrid, database commands are really the most important features.
So when you say database commands, what specifically are you referring to?
Well, I've just tried, for example, command B SQL dump. I wanted to dump the database. It didn't work, or is it different than the for Drupal? We use the same command, right? Drush SQL dump. Does it work?
No, so I think I've just looked in the issue queue, and there is an issue I've created for adding commands to import and export databases. So that's obviously something yet to come. When we do add commands, it's one of the part of the refactoring I've been doing over the last sort of 12 months is been to try to get away from the sort of Drupal specific wording or stuff that was used. So, for example, with the, I can't think of something off the top of my head, but I know with like the status command, there's an alias st, which works. I've also made an alias info just because that seems to make sense as well. So where I've got command names, I've sometimes change them to be either just a bit more simpler or something that makes a bit more sense. I've kept as much as I can the aliases for people that were using Drush to be able to come in and do the same sort of thing. But this is part of where the breaking changes may occur. There might be differences in how things work, but as much as possible, we'll try to keep aliases at least working so that the same command words can be used between the different ones. But yeah, there's definitely an issue for opening, adding database import and export commands at least.
Thank you.
So Peter, how about like, what is the status in current, how can people be helpful to this project? Is there anything that you need help with, or, I don't know.
Yeah, I think just getting an idea of what people want from this. Like, as I said, I've used some commands a lot and others none at all. So getting an idea of what people are wanting, opening issues, say, hey, I really love this command from Drush, or I really like this functionality that even Drush didn't do, or what, I don't know, maybe Drush does everything. So yeah, posting the issues, what you're wanting to see. If you're a developer and you think you can help out with writing the code to implement those issues, you can certainly go ahead and start doing that. There's only 2 branches in B. One's the main one. The other one is the one I'm currently doing the test stuff in. It has a slightly updated like Lando file, which I've accidentally put into that branch instead of the other one. But apart from that, the main branch is sort of ready to go in terms of the commands are all like sort of standardized the way that they're written. There's an API markdown file which explains how the API side of things works. So if people want to use that to start writing their own commands, you can certainly go ahead and start doing that. And I mean, I'm currently working through the tests, getting that working. I should be done within like a week or 2, a few weeks max, and then hopefully push that in, merge it all, and then release hopefully more stable version 1, and then we can focus on starting to add more functionality.
So if somebody had a favorite command and wanted to help get that command in, I mean, do they have to wait until you're done refactoring before they can do that? No? Okay.
Well, I mean, I personally won't be focusing on that until the version 1's out, but if other people want to start making pull requests, that they can certainly start doing that now. Yeah.
Okay. And how difficult it is for somebody that hasn't worked with Drush before, or how difficult is it to like add a command? Is this?
So it depends on the command. I mean, in terms of just adding the code to B, it's very simple. You just can look at the API documentation that I've written and copy that, or any other command, just copy that. It's basically one function that defines your command. It tells it what the name of the command is, what the aliases are, what, if any, bootstrap level backdrop needs to be at in order to run the command. Some commands like downloading a project, you don't need backdrop to be sort of up and running. You can just download it into the file system. Whereas other commands like showing the log messages obviously need an install working website. You can just copy.
I would like to add on this. If people start pull requests and they want to implement some kind of command they need, but they have no idea, they can look for the similar command on Drush, because the syntaxes are pretty similar. And just not to copy whatever Drush carries. As I said, it has lots of dirty code, but basically they can have an idea at least from Drush, because it is in most of ways same. The implementation of commands similar. I did compare. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, B, as I said, I've tried to standardize the syntax of it. So I'd say look to B, the API thing, or the other commands as to how to write the initial hook function, and then it'll call a different function to actually the command code that's run. And then for that stuff, if I'm implementing commands or other people want to write pull requests, then yeah, I'll likely be checking out how Drush or Brush did it. Because to answer Tim's question, it really does depend on the command. Like if you're wanting to, for example, write a command that synchronizes a website of one server with the website for another, that's probably going to be a lot more involved than just running cron on a website. I mean, literally, the command to run cron is just the backdrop function for running cron. That's it, basically. So it depends on the command as to how complex it is. But the simpler ones, I think, would be quite easy for people to do, even if they have just a little bit of experience with pull requests or writing code. It shouldn't be too hard to copy what's there and just tweak it a bit for what you need. But obviously, the more complex stuff, then I'm myself probably going to need help too with especially the database stuff, maybe. So yeah.
Okay. So it sounds like you were saying that you were in this refactoring. You thought it would be about another month or so. Is your current guess?
No, maybe. I mean, weeks. I don't know. I mean, okay. I've been doing it in my spare time, just on and off. I'm trying to focus on that as opposed to other things, just to try and get it done. Because as I said, it's been like 12 months on and off. I was doing it for a few months solid, and then I got distracted onto other stuff, and I forgot about it. And I come back a few months later. But now I'm really just trying to push and get it done because I know that people are waiting on it. I'm wanting to use it more on my own server instead of Drush so much. So yeah, I'm really trying to get it done. So it shouldn't be like more than a few weeks probably.
Martin, you had a question?
Yeah, when you were showing the Git directory, you had Composer in there. I think one of the problems with Drupal 8 was you, particularly for a lot of people who are maybe a bit more amateur developers like me, is that Drush worked absolutely fine on shared hosting, but Composer didn't at all. So is B dependent on Composer? Because it tend with Drupal 8, it tends to be a resource hog that just crashed anything. And have you done any? Have you tried installing B on like a hosting platform at all?
So with Composer, yeah, you would have seen that on the repository on GitHub. That's showing the 1.x branch. On my latest branch, where I've been doing the main work with running the tests and stuff. Part of my fixing up the test was removing Composer, because all the Composer was doing was just installing PHP unit and I think something else, other Drupal coding standards to sort of test against that. But I've now just got that directly in the Lando file. So I actually removed Composer in the latest version. So there is no Composer for B now, so you won't need that. And that's part of the reason I like B over other projects. And as Alan was saying, why they forked Drush previous to all the Composer stuff, because it's unnecessary for something like Backdrop. So yeah, so B doesn't need Composer. That's been removed in the latest version, which I'll merge in soon. And as for other platforms, I personally have a virtual private server that I have on my websites on. I've installed B on there and it works fine. I haven't tried like shared hosting. I think other people might have done in the past, but I can't say for certain. But definitely something that maybe others can test and let me know how that goes.
Great. Wilbur, go ahead.
One thing that Drush and Brush provided us was site aliases so that we could execute commands on a remote server based on those alias files using the setup from the setup files. Is that something that will be part of the B project?
Yeah, I think I have worked with those with Drush, but mainly on Drupal 7 or Drupal 8 sites. I haven't actually done anything with that in Backdrop. So not sure how that would work with Backdrop. But again, just if it's something that you're wanting, you can open an issue, and if you've got the knowledge to do it, by all means. If not, then I can try and look at how Drush or if Brush does that too, and try and copy that in future. But yeah, we are wanting to make it as feature complete as possible, so that I mean, Jeff said that he sort of sees B as the future for Backdrop. So yeah, if we can get it as feature complete as possible, then we won't need all these different commands. We can just focus on one.
Anybody else have any other questions?
Maybe a question for Jeff is that do you think that Lando will provide this out of the box as part of images? I guess that's the right word.
Yeah, you could certainly put it in as a build step now to pull it into your project and use it immediately. But I think definitely that if this becomes, as far as Lando's concerned, it's like more about what the community wants. So if this becomes the default Backdrop thing, then it's highly likely that Lando's going to put that as the default thing for Backdrop recipes.
For those that don't know, Jeff, do you still work with Lando or on Lando? Are you still involved in the project? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So Jeff actually doesn't just work with Lando, but works on Lando. So one of the first things I ran into in saying, okay, I'm going to try out B. So I installed it locally, was able to like download modules and stuff, and then realized that I'm using Lando. So it was like I had to get B to work with Lando. And so I opened a question in the issue or in the Backdrop forum, and Peter replied. And so if you're looking, plus, did you add instructions for how to add B to your Lando install somewhere else, or is the forum the best place to find them?
Well, it's in the forum for now. I've got an issue open to add it to the B repository. I'm just not sure where the best place is for that, whether I should just put in the README file, or whether I should start using the wiki for stuff like that. So I've got an issue there for that, which I'll look at that. But it does have a link to the forum. If anyone's wanting that information now, then that's available in the forum, which there's a link there in the B issue queue of how to get B working with your own Lando setup if you've got an existing Lando site sort of thing.
Right. I did. I was able to get it working smoothly once Peter helped me out a little bit and put the instructions in the forum post. So I just like to say that there is. Go ahead. Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Luke, you're not muted. Now he is. I think that there's a bias away from sort of stressing things like command line tools in the Backdrop community because of a lot of people have come to Backdrop because of like being afraid of or not liking the complexity of tools like Composer. And there are still a lot of Drupal developers that don't use Drush. And I think there's a little bit of a fear that we don't want to make scare people away that aren't used to these tools. But I keep hearing from, those developers that do use Drush a lot in Drupal 7, like that's a concern of theirs, is where are those opportunities in Backdrop? So I'm really glad to see some progress here, because I think, I think there's really a need and space for it in Backdrop. So I'm not a heavy Drush user or B user, but I do rely on it, regularly. So it's nice And I'm excited to get to see B get there so I can settle on just one tool. I think I have this hesitancy right now to like invest time with Drush and Backdrop because I know it may not be there forever. And so sometimes I just like keep kicking that can down the road.
Yeah, I personally have Drush installed on my server and all my client websites I hosted just because I use it for everything. And I'm really looking forward to the day where I can get rid of that and put B on there instead.
Great question. In Drush, there's the ability for module developers to include their own Drush commands. And the example I'm thinking of is in CiviCRM, which has its own database update Drush command. You run Drush CVUG-DB to update a CiviCRM database. And does B have that same ability? So that, for example, the backdrop port of CiviCRM could include the B command to do a database update.
Yep, I believe that's something that Jeff or one of the other previous sort of contributors added, which is still in there. I haven't like sort of tested it fully because obviously it's been focused on the core commands, but I believe there is the code in there that looks for certain file names in certain places to pull in other commands. So definitely worth investigating that, but that should be there and working, I believe.
Anybody else? I'm pretty sure that probably most of the people on this call, from my personal knowledge, use, or from their comments already, do use Drush. So if anybody was looking for like a more of an introduction than you got today, let us know, and maybe we can point you at some resources. But fundamentally, I think B seems to work a lot like Drush. So here's a question I have. As in preparing for this virtual user group and having to post tweets and event notifications on the topic, it seems awkward to just write B. Can we say anything more about how we want to talk about it or brand it? Because every time I write the letter B, it's like, do I put it in quotes so people understand that I didn't just forget to finish my word? What do I do? It just feels really kind of weird. How will I get used to that?
I would say backdrop CLI if you want to give more context.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you think, Peter?
To write backdrop console and then in brackets B in quotes when I'm referring to it in like a public group that people might not understand. If I'm just talking to someone who already knows what I'm talking about, I could say B to make it easier. But yeah, sometimes just expand it out if you sort of want to avoid confusion.
Alan?
Well, this is crazy suggestion, but we picked up Drush specifically because it was fancy. It resembled Drush, and at the same time, it was obvious it is not Drush because it has first letter replaced for B. So since we are going to discontinue Drush as B matures, we can start using Drush if you want. I don't know if it's acceptable.
I think you could also go the Prince way, and you could, Tim, if you want to do a lot of typing, you could always say B, the project formerly known as Drush.
There we go.
And be happy we didn't pick a symbol.
Yes. Okay, that works. Well, we're getting close to an hour. I think we might want to wrap this up. It looks like, Wilbur, you have one more question?
I just have one more place that I would be most interested in seeing some development, and it's not something that we'll take from Drush, and that is developing configuration management tools. So that's a unique thing about Backdrop, and I think it's confusing and it's not well developed yet. And I think that would be a place that we could really push the project forward. And I just say that as somebody coming from Drupal 7 with a lot of experience and now working a lot with Drupal 8 and Backdrop. And I love the project and I'm all about it, but it just needs some attention to make that work for people that don't really care about configuration management and people that really care about configuration management, because that really can make a developer's life difficult if that's a process that's just hard to work with. So I'll just say that, and that, you know, as B becomes the default for the Backdrop project, the next thing we should really talk about is that configuration process.
There's an issue for it in the BQ, and one thing I would say about that is the Backdrop Drush extension has Backdrop configuration import and configuration export, so we could just take those and port them to B instead of starting from scratch. So there is existing work that could be leveraged instead of starting from scratch.
Can I just say the BQ?
But are you getting hungry?
Well, you were pushing me that way, yeah.
The BBQ.
Okay, the BBQ. Dan, another call. Any more questions? I'm going to make one or two announcements, and then we can wrap up. Okay. So
I just want to
go
put
ahead.
in a plug for B, because if you wouldn't make it B, I would make an alias that would be B to run it, so it's only one key. So that's already done. It's like done, totally done.
Good point. Good point. So just some quick announcements. We did a virtual user group 2 weeks ago. We did one today. That's the most we've done in a 4 week period. There's a lot of topics I would like to cover, so I'm inclined to sort of keep doing them on a frequent basis. I'd love to hear what other topics. We have an outstanding request that we've been working on for a while to do something on writing tests. I'd also like to do some more beginner-friendly topics. However, in 2 weeks from now, in about 2 weeks, we'll be doing our next Backdrop Live. So I think we'll take a little bit of break between the virtual user groups. But everybody, if you're on this call, hopefully you know about Backdrop Live. We did a 48-hour, a 2-day, it's like our online camp, Backdrop camp. We did one in September that went pretty well. We had about 60 people register for it, and we had up to 30 or 40 people online at a time. And we're doing a slightly shorter version a week from this coming Friday. Well, at least in the part of the world I'm in. For Peter, it would be a week from Saturday. These are unconference sort of style. So you bring us your topics that you want to talk about. We'll schedule sessions. People can do little demos. It'll be somewhat impromptu. We're not asking people to do big prepared presentations. If you do want to do some kind of a presentation and record it in advance, you can, and then we can use Backdrop Live to talk about it. So we officially just made the registration live last night for Backdrop Live. We're asking for a donation, a voluntary donation with registration. And I think Jen right now is maybe not here because she's working on fixing problems with our PayPal account so that we can accept those donations. But you could, in theory, still register right now because it works without the donation form. And then you can always come back and give us a donation later. So feel free to run over to the website and register. Give me any feedback on that process. We will be adding, the site might be a little information sparse right now. We'll be adding that. And as people register and tell us what they want to talk about, we'll start to build out our schedule and what topics to have. Does anybody have any questions or anything to add about Backdrop Live? Okay, any other announcements that anybody else has in the Backdrop world? Okay. So expect the next user group to be in about 4 weeks. And I'll try and get an announcement out about that soon, although there might be a little bit of break after Backdrop Live as we recover from our 24-hour sprint of backdropping. So thanks everybody for coming. I'm going to end the YouTube.